All right. Hello, everybody. This is going to be video 771 coming from camera number 2. I usually camera number 1's on my laptop. This is on top of my second monitor. So you have a different view. Kind of, instead of up my nose, you're down my nose. But yeah, so 771. I'm going to try this a little differently. I noticed that last time the microphone was picking up the computer CPU and it would kind of go in the background. I didn't really like it. So anyway, 771. Today is September 26th, continuing this series of Sunday videos. And I want to talk a little bit about some guilt that I had last night as I was getting ready to watch Saturday Night Live with my daughter. Commercial came on for a company in town by the name of Watson's. I don't know if you have a Watson's near you, but basically it's a store that sells indoor play equipment like poker tables and pool tables and that type of thing, you know, furniture that you would use like kind of to entertain. They specialize in outdoor furniture, you know, tables with umbrellas on top of them, fire pits, above ground pools, trampolines, you know, kind of an outdoorsy type store, but with a twinge towards social stuff, you know. And usually in their commercials, like in the commercial that it had last night, it had, you know, a backyard and people were cooking on their grill and the kids were jumping on the trampoline and they were tiki torches for some reason in the middle of the day, tiki torches going off, you know, and the commercial was someone of, you know, the end of the summer sale at Watson's, you know, come in and get, you know, everything on clearance, you know, and it kind of sent a twinge of guilt like in me, and it took me a little bit to process it, and I guess I want to talk about it because it definitely was a trans thing and definitely falls into the purview of the channel being middle age anyway. So why the guilt? I think that I internalized it because I felt like I had failed my family, you know. As a father, in my generation, the father was the provider, was the, you know, brought stuff home, even though that model is a little, definitely in my generation, outdated today, absolutely outdated. You know, whether you're a man or a woman, a wife, a husband, a spouse, non-binary, anybody in a household can bring home the bacon, as it were, and help do the house, you know, help do the house, set up the house, and a home. And I think the commercial just zapped me because I thought about my daughter growing up and some of the things that maybe my ex and I, my spouse, my ex-wife, some of the things that we had talked about that were shown in the commercial. Having a house, having a backyard, having friends or family over. The first few years of our marriage, when things were kind of much better, not dysfunctional, things were kind of, you know, and even my daughter's first birthday. It's probably a good example because everybody came over. My daughter's first birthday, she ate the cake and, you know, whatever. And, you know, we had 20, 30 people in our backyard, and we had an above ground pool, and we did at night, we had the tiki torches and the table with the umbrella. I mean, it was a scene out of my past, I guess, from the Watson's commercial. But it made me feel like I failed in some way, and I'm not sure if that's the right word. because, you know, because of, not necessarily because of my transition, but because my marriage collapsed. And my transition was a stimulus to it, but not the reason why the marriage collapsed. It definitely was a contributing factor. My existence was we broke up. We had to sell the house. A lot of the things that maybe we wanted to have for my daughter as she grew up. Yes, for the couple of years that I had lived as a single parent in the house with my daughter, we still had the insanely huge swing set with the Ford on top of it, we still kind of had those things, but it was almost like a relic, like you see the churches in Scotland and Ireland, where you just have the stone structures of like a cathedral, and it's all the wood is rotten. It's kind of like a skeleton or a fossil of what used to be. And I can remember when my daughter grew somewhat out of the swing set, and it kind of became a joke. The cats would go out, the neighborhood cats would pee and poop in the litter box, the sandbox underneath. And the cats love to sit on the little fort and the ladder up to it, and, I'm king of the fort, whatever. And the swing set, we were too big to use the swings, but I still kept it up in the hopes that, my daughter's cousins would come over and play. We would still have a family function or a 4th of July. We had a 4th of July. People came over and launched fireworks in our backyard. But once I transitioned and the family broke apart, those things didn't happen anymore. So that's, like I said, it was kind of like a relic or a ruin, if you will, of the past. A skeleton, something that wasn't used. And just over time, there was grass growing up in it. I'd have to go out with a weed whacker and, weed whack around the base and get all the plants out and get the cat poop out, whatever. So I saw this commercial, and it just made me, I guess, the guilt, like, what did I do? What I did was wrong. That my transitioning was wrong. And the idea was kind of that, once I had realized I needed to transition, I couldn't put it off anymore. The idea was, well, couldn't you just wait? Couldn't you just wait until your daughter is 18 and out of the house? And it was like, no. I'm trying to remember. She was in 2nd or 3rd grade when I transitioned, So, and what, senior year is 12, so 10 years, could I wait 10 years to transition? No, by that time it had just gotten to the point I couldn't put it off anymore. And if you'd watched some of the previous videos, when I had first met my then girlfriend who became my wife, I had said on our first date that I was transgender. I just didn't know when I was going to transition. So, that was I had learned from my previous dating experiences, get that out. If you can't handle the fact that I'm trans, let's not go any further. And my ex-wife was like, oh, no, I'm fine with it, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, whoa, this is a person to build a relationship with and have a child with, because they're going to be cool with me transitioning, But that did not play itself out that way. Once I transitioned, it was just too much for her. And some other things as well that's not pertinent to this video. So again, back to this commercial, and it made me feel I felt like saying, did I do a disservice? Did I do something wrong? Here's where the guilt comes in. Did I do something wrong against my daughter because I brought her into this world knowing that I was trans? You know what I mean? Like, couldn't I? Why would I bring her into this world knowing that I was going to transition or whatnot? But to be fair, like I said, I didn't know when I was going to transition. I knew I wanted to transition, but there's a part of me that just says, well, even then, if you know you're gonna transition, you just don't know when. Why would you have a child? Why would you bring a child into this world? Is it selfish of me? And I don't necessarily have a good answer for that. At the time, again, my then wife was seemingly okay with it. We had the child, and it was just my time to do it, and it didn't work out. But at that time, we thought it would, you know. So I guess it's not really a fair question, but it's something that I think we come across when we are middle-aged and we do have kids, or we're thinking about having kids, or we already have a child, and it can be a bit of a, well, you can't transition. I met someone who, they had said, well, I have a daughter, I have a son. It's not fair for me to be so selfish that I want to transition, and that's a very loaded statement. On the airplane they tell you to, in the unlikely event of a loss of cabin pressure, masks will drop from the ceiling, and we encourage parents to put the mask over their own face first and then assist their child. I think that logic of it's selfish of me to do this is somewhat backwards. I think it's better to be your authentic self and have your children and raise them. But and definitely the model of normal that my generation, the time frame that I was raised in, is very different from today, 2021 and going forward. With you have non-binary parents. I have a good friend, Max. Um, you know, and some other folks that I'm friends with on Facebook, that their children are going to be so much more ready for the future, you know. Whereas I think some of the kids who their parents are stuck in their way, their parents are living in a world that their grandparents lived in that doesn't exist anymore, and those kids, when they go to when they go to high school or college or wherever, and they meet the first non-binary person, they're going to be like a fish out of water, and everybody else is going to be, no, it's normal. Oh, this is my friend Terry. you know they're I hope we can meet my friend Terry. They're really cool. Well, what does he do? Oh, well, no, Terry's non-binary, so the correct pronoun would be they, them, theirs. Terry prefers they, and the person is going to be like, does not compute, the little Star Wars droids getting hit with the ion cannon or the ion rifle, bzzz, and then they're just going to have to process it. But anyway, so back to this commercial. It really, I felt like, again, like I had failed or I had done something wrong. And I guess it because I wanted to provide that childhood. I wanted to provide the the freedom, I can't think of a good word, of childhood. I wanted to provide that for my daughter, and I think I have. But you know what I mean? Like, again, when you're with somebody, and you'll pardon the assumption, man and woman on my part, my spouse and I, when we were married before I transitioned, we talked about summer camp and things we were going to do in the yard, and we were thinking about buying an RV because we love to go camping and taking our daughter and everything. All of those future plans just got crumpled up like a piece of paper. And part of me just feels like that's where I feel like maybe I have failed and that I have not provided that, you know. And that may very well be true, but life doesn't work that way, unfortunately. You could have for example, and I hate to say normal because that's not a good word, and I hate to say cis because that's not really a good word. So you could have two partners, two folks, man or woman, man, woman, person, non-binary, and very healthy, happy future. We're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do college, we're going to, da-da-da-da-da. And one of them has a heart attack and dies. And so then you have a single parent who can't provide, and yeah, I guess under, some state laws you would have health insurance. Again, it was in my situation at the time, if I had passed or if my partner had passed, my ex-wife, we had life insurance through my work, things would have been provided for, but you know what I mean? We wouldn't have provided that dual parent thing to help my child through the paces, And so that can happen to anybody. It doesn't have to be trans or cis, AMAB, AFAB. That can happen to anybody. And I think back to my own, we talked about wanting to provide and my sister said this at one point with her children, her daughter. She wanted to provide for her daughter a childhood, She wanted to provide Christmas and New Year's and Thanksgiving and the things, trick-or-treating, the things that we associate sort of with childhood. Now, unfortunately, divorce struck there too, and that broke that up. So, is it one of those things that's like a myth? It just doesn't happen, or for some people it happens, for some people it doesn't. I can remember the first Thanksgiving I spent when I was in ROTC in Atlanta, and the school didn't shut down. Georgia Tech didn't shut down for Thanksgiving. You had Friday off, and so I went home with another cadet to spend the day, and I was just amazed at their family. I mean, there was the father, there was the mother, there was, all of the stereotypical nuclear family, traditional nuclear family normalcy, and it was like, the parents cared about what the child thought, and the child cared about the parents, and it was so different from the dysfunctionalism that I grew up under. And it made me think about, well, shit, almost jealousy, And as I got to know this cadet more before I dropped out, we talked about their childhood and the things they did. And, I felt very envious of them. Take my transgender experiences aside, their dad did stuff with them. They were part of their lives. There was a whole side that I want to kind of call wholesome. There was, again, a textbook, for lack of a better word, a textbook, what raising a child is that I just didn't have, Again, not even touching my being trans, And the reality is again, not every kid, oh, sorry, that's my son at the door. Not every kid gets that, And I almost think that's the norm. I used to think it was the flip side, Once in a blue moon, you don't get it, but I think that's really the norm. I think, again, there's no perfect. There's a meme on the internet that it shows an apple, and the apple and the camera is perfect. It's this red apple, it's delicious. But then there's a mirror behind it that shows the other side of the apple, and it's rotten. And the lesson is that if you only see things from a certain way, they can be perfect when in reality they can be rotten to the core. So take that for what you will. But anyway, back to what happened last night. Again, it took me a while to process it, and if you take trans out of it, and if you take not having a good childhood necessarily out of it, there's going to be differences in our pasts and what we experience. And I guess the idea is every generation hopefully gets better. The things that maybe my dad was deficient in, I can try to be a better dad for my daughter, better parent. And then she can take that and she can be a better, you know what I mean? Like eventually over time, we get better. And I think that's kind of the hope, but again, parents and children as human beings, we have our flaws. And, you could have the greatest parents in the world and the kid's a snot, but anyway, I guess I wanted to share that if as part of your transition, someone says to you, and usually it's a family member or a spouse who doesn't want you to transition, and they're like, can you just wait until the child, hopefully you won't fall into that trap. And then the other thing is not to go into too much detail, but part of divorce and coming up with a settlement for the divorce. I have many friends who, and I was on the path of it, where as part of your transition, it's like the child becomes somewhat collateral, and the other person will say, well, okay, since you're going to transition, that's not a healthy environment for our child, so I'm going to get custody of the child. And that is just a travesty. I mean, it's a travesty, and in this day and age, don't go for that. The child needs both parents in their life, and at least from my experience with my daughter, children are much cooler with their parents transitioning than adults. The kids, all a kid cares about is what's for dinner. They don't care if you transition or not, as long as you take care of their needs. Anyway, I think that's it. I think that's all I really have to talk about. Once again, I come back to my saying about you do the best you can with what you have, which I think applies to parenting in general and life in general. My mom had said to me once that parents that don't associate with their children when they grow up, they miss out on a part of the child's life when they're a young adult, where they get to kind of see what the child does and how they become. They don't become friends, but they kind of become more friendly. The relationship is still child and parent, but the child is like, I'm willing to talk to my mom and share with her anything that I do, whereas I can't do that with my dad. In my dad's mind, I stopped when I went to college some 30 years ago. That's when my life ended, And so when I talk to him on the phone, if I'm so lucky to talk to him on the phone, the image that he has in his mind is of me as an 18-year-old young man going off to college. You know, I never changed, even though he knows I've transitioned, and we've met each other since since I 3 years ago. I think is the last time I saw him face to face. It's 3 years ago, and I transitioned like 6, 7 years ago. So I mean, he knows, but in his mind, I'm stuck in that, and he's in his 70s, you know, and so he's stuck in his ways. You know, I cut him a lot of slack. I cut old people a lot of slack, and the older I get, the more I appreciate that. But anyway, so I think we're going to cut this off here, and I hope that things are going your way. And yeah, there's no shortage of guilt and shame, the things that we put on ourselves as we go through this process. And you know, again, I hope you can say to yourself, I'm doing the best I can with what I have, and you're willing to put in whatever work you can to make your goals achievable. And that may require a little extra overtime, that may require some elbow grease, that may require a little bit of waiting, but you're worth it. You are worth the effort. Right. All right, till next time. Goodbye and good luck.